Hello, welcome Dr. Sushma Singh this side. Today we start block 6 Globalization. Unit 20 Economic, Social and Cultural Dimensions of Globalization. As we know, the theme of block 6 is globalization. It is a fact that in the contemporary world, there is hardly any social, cultural, economic, and political realms which can said to be impervious to the process of globalization. Globalization as an interchange of various attributes among different societies is not a new phenomena, but an ongoing process. What makes the present day process of globalization different and distinct from the earlier ones in the rapid increase in the frequent and density of these interchanges? It is important to learn about the current pace of the process of globalization and related aspects. Block 6 deals with the process of globalization and its impact on the notion of development. In this unit, the concept of and features of globalization and its various dimensions are discussed. The first part of the unit deals with the very concept of globalization and how different scholars have defined this concept. Then it goes on to discuss the economic, social and cultural dimensions of globalization in more detail. Each aspect has been elaborated in general and in relation to the Indian situation as well. Now let us move to the topic, the concept and definition of globalization. In very simple terms, globalization can be depicted as increasing global interconnectedness. It is a process rather than an outcome, which refers to the trend towards the growing interconnectedness of different parts of the world, not to their being interconnected. It is primarily an interchange of economic, social, cultural, political, technological attributes that takes place between societies when different societies come into contact with each other. Though this interchange is going on for times immortal, this process was termed as globalization for the first time around the second half of the 20th century, while much of the literature on this has appeared since the late 1970s and 1980s. Globalization as an idea of modernization within the global market was mentioned in the writings of the Marx and Saint Simon also. Certain scholars even argue that this process of globalization has been going on since the beginning of the mankind, and it has affected all cultures, even remote and isolated, though in varying degrees. The contemporary globalization differs from the process that could be observed in the past, primarily in terms of the quantum of interchange and interconnectedness. Everything happens much faster today than it did in previous eras. The current process of globalization, which is popularly described as gradual removal of barriers to the trade and investment between nations, was started towards the end of the 20th century. It is said to aim to achieve economic efficiency through competitiveness while seeking the broader objectives of the economic and social development. It touches all spheres of human life: economic, social, cultural, political, and environmental. The most common definition of present-day globalization refers to the growing integration of the various countries to the world economy. It results mostly from a freer movement of capital, products, and information, which affects not just the economy but also, as we said earlier, the political, cultural, social, and environmental arenas. Different disciplines such as economics, history, political science, sociology, etc. employ different criteria for elaborating and defining the concept of globalization. Anthony Giddens, a sociologist, defined globalization as an intensification of worldwide social relations through which far away places are linked together in such a way that the events in one place are affected by a process taking place many miles away and vice versa. David Henderson, an economist, views globalization as a model of fully internationally integrated market meeting the two conditions of: first, the free movement of goods, services, labor, and capital, resulting in a single market in inputs and outputs. And second, full national treatment for foreign investors as well as nationals working overseas, so that, economically speaking, there are no foreigners. For McNall Desai, globalization is the growing reciprocal interdependence and integration of various economies around the globe. Kanchi Umai phrase "the borderless world" captures the sense of radical progress and modernity and of the life beyond the constraints of the traditional national state, which infuses much of the popular writings about the globalization. For Richard O. Beheran, government globalization essentially refers to a mixture of international, multinational, offshore, and global activities and involves a general progression from the domestic to global. Malcolm Waters finds globalization as a social process in which the constraints of geography on social and cultural arrangements recede, and in which people become increasingly aware that they are receding. For him, globalization merely implies greater connectedness and deterritorialization. Scott, too, understands globalization as a process of deterritorialization and global relations as supra-territorial. For some others, globalization essentially means an intensification of multinational, international, and transnational linkages in all spheres of human activity, including trade and commerce, governance, and non-government lobbying, as a consequence of new communication technology of the contemporary period. Patrici calls the contemporary globalization as accelerated globalization. Current accelerated globalization is shorthand for several major interwoven trends. According to him, current accelerated globalization comes in a package together with information nation, which means the role of information and communication technology, and flexibilization, that means changes in production system towards flexible production, and the last, reconfiguration of states and regionalization. He views globalization as a process, the growing interconnectedness of different parts of the world, globalization as awareness, the recognition of growing interconnectedness, and globalization as project, the advocacy and pursuit of particular forms of globalization and attempts to manage and steer globalization in a particular direction. From the above account, it can be concluded that globalization is a multifaceted, multidimensional, and comprehensive phenomena, having its potential impact on a whole range of contemporary social, political, cultural, and economic relationships. Now, let us try to understand what makes the present day process of globalization distinct from the past. Here we want to close this lecture. Thanks for patientful hearing.